Hey guys, David here from Nintendo3DSblog.com with a review of the Nintendo 3DS. Nintendo has learnt a lot of lessons in hardware design due to their time with the Nintendo DS, and they've managed to pack a ton of features into a device that's about the same size as the DS Lite. Those features include a gyroscope that allows for motion-controlled games, a 3D camera on the back, the circle pad, and the main attraction, a widescreen display that allows for 3D effects without the need for glasses. But I'll talk about that in a moment. The circle pad is a rubbery analog stick that feels very smooth. I was worried that the D-pad may get in the way, but I've had no problems with that so far. The stick is short enough that it won't break, but it still feels very comfortable. Because the D-pad is lower on the 3DS, I imagine it could cause a bit of strain on your hand if a game relies on it, but I haven't come across any problems like this yet. Plus, since you can use the circle pad when playing DS games on the 3DS, it won't be an issue for people playing older titles anyways. The shoulder buttons, the X, Y, A, B buttons, the Start, Select and Home buttons, and the D-pad are all clicky. This means that pressing them has a great sense of feedback, and there's no hint of mushiness, which is very welcome. I'm not a fan of the wireless switch on the right side of the system, although it's not that big of a deal. I just prefer traditional on or off switches rather than the ones that snap back. The 3D slider, which allows you to adjust the intensity of the 3D effects, is very well positioned, and I had no trouble getting used to flicking the slider up and down multiple times during a gaming session. What's perhaps most annoying about the design though is the placement of the stylus. It's not a huge turn-off, but after a couple of weeks with the 3DS, I still find myself fumbling for the stylus, which tempts me to use my finger on the touchscreen more than I should. And given that the 3DS is a fingerprint magnet, the screen can get dirtied up pretty quickly, although it's easy enough to wipe it clean. Nintendo has thrown in yet another camera into the 3DS, taking the count up to 3 in total. They're all low resolution at 0.3 megapixels, and the sensors don't provide photos any better than 10-year-old mobile phones, but two of the cameras combine to make a 3D camera, and this more than makes up for any deficiency in the clarity of images. 3D photos sound like a gimmick to me, and even after getting the 3DS, it wasn't something I particularly cared for. But then I spent some time in recent days trying to be more creative with my photography, and if you line up the shot correctly, and use perspective to your advantage, you can achieve some stunning results. The photos are grainy, and the colours are off, and there's a whole lot of other things wrong with them, but the depth can appear so genuine that your mind fills in the blanks and you feel as if you're looking through a window rather than an image you've captured. You may have to play around with it to get impressive results, but I imagine the 3D camera could quickly become a favourite feature among a lot of people. Nevertheless, it would be nice if Nintendo improved the camera's sensor when they released their first update in 3DS hardware. The big question in a lot of people's mind is, does the 3D work? And the simple answer is, yes. This is real 3D, not some cheap trick. It's no different from what you may have experienced if you saw Avatar in 3D or any other recent 3D movie. The only difference is that the screen size is smaller and there's no need to wear any sort of glasses, which just makes it more awesome. But developers can choose how to use 3D, and this can be both a good thing and a bad thing. Some games use the 3D very well. Bust-a-Move Universe, while not a great game by any means, looks amazing in 3D. The simple 2D graphics leap out of the screen, and it makes an otherwise uninteresting affair at least worth playing around with. I had more trouble with games like Super Monkey Ball 3D though. I'm not sure why this is exactly the case, but the 3D just didn't seem to add much depth to the game world. Everything still felt flat. Speaking of which, the 3DS supports both depth and pop-out forms of 3D. But in most cases depth is used, and this is to our benefit. This form of 3D causes less eye strain and can be made to enhance the gameplay. In a game like Kid Icarus Uprising, for instance, the 3D depth makes dodging between attacks and various projectiles very intuitive. As far as eye strain goes, it's a pretty tricky subject. Everyone's different, but I do think people have gone overboard in some of their complaints. It's true that you won't be able to play the 3DS with 3D effects turned on for hours without a break. Your eyes are basically doing twice the work, and you will get tired. But this hasn't seemed like a big deal to me. I'll be playing the 3DS, and with a quick flick of the 3D slider, I can turn the effects off for a little break, and then just turn them on when I'm ready. It's easy enough to adapt the 3D effects to how my eyes are feeling. Plus, I found as time has gone on, I've adapted to the 3D effects. I had a lot more eye strain troubles the first time I played the 3DS than when I do now. It's new technology and your eye muscles are doing things they're not used to doing, hence the strain. The best way to avoid eye strain is to play the 3DS when you're wide awake, and maybe turn the brightness setting down a couple of notches. Another problem with the 3D effect involves the sweet spot, which is a certain angle you must look at the 3DS from, otherwise the image becomes blurry. This is one of the main reasons why 3D content without glasses hasn't caught on in the past. It's easy enough to find the sweet spot, but if you're playing something like a racing game and have the tendency to move the 3DS around, the screen will continually blur as you lose sight of the sweet spot. And any game that uses motion controls will just totally break when played in 3D. Once again, it's something that you can sort of adjust to, but Nintendo really couldn't do anything about it at this point. The display technology that allows for multiple sweet spots is still too costly, but will hopefully make its way into new versions of the 3DS in the future. I think the best way to approach the 3D effect in the 3DS is like icing on the cake. Not all games will use it well, but when a game does use it well, like Kid Icarus Uprising or Bust-a-Move Universe, it's very impressive. You'll be blown away by the 3D the first time you see it, but it's everything else that's packaged in the operating system and the promise of games in the future that gives the 3DS substance. On the software front, there is a ton of stuff packed into the operating system. You'll be spending a lot of time in the home menu. This is basically the main hub for your 3DS that you can access at pretty much any time while using the device. You can control brightness levels, switch between different pieces of software, and jot down notes. And there's finally an easy way to manage your friends list, although you will still have to deal with 12-digit friend codes, but they are universal, so you won't have to deal with one for each game you play, which does make them sort of bearable. The biggest omission is that there is no way to message your friends, which is a pretty big shame. The feature will likely be added in the future, but it does sort of make the friends list a little bit less useful at the moment. The inbuilt software with the biggest wow factor is without a doubt the augmented reality games. These are the games and applications that make it appear as if digital content is appearing in the real world. For example, target shooting places a bunch of targets on your table, or floor, or any surface you wish, and then requires you to physically move around your environment to take them all out. At the end of a few rounds, you're put into a battle with a dragon which you must shoot until it turns to stone. There's also a game that morphs the world into a mini golf course, another that allows you to go fishing, and a 3D drawing application that has plenty of neat effects you can play around with. And that's just a taste of the augmented reality content. After playing around with those games and applications, you're able to unlock more difficult versions of the games and new applications. The only downside to these augmented reality games is they do require you to use cards that come bundled with the system. These are simply reference points that allow your 3DS to do various calculations about how far you're away from a surface and what angle the 3DS is being held at. There's no real way around this though, as augmented reality without a reference point is pretty unreliable. Two of the other biggest additions to the operating system include Street Pass and Spot Pass. Street Pass allows your 3DS to automatically exchange data with other 3DSs if you walk within a certain range. I think it's something like 30 feet. The most basic example of this allows your Mii to be sent to another person's 3DS and vice versa, but it can go much further than that. If you have a save file for Ridge Racer 3D for instance, and walk past someone with a save file for that same game, some of your racing data will be exchanged. This allows you to race against that person's ghost in a time trial. That's just a very simple example though, and other games do use the feature as a more central mechanic during gameplay, which is a very ambitious idea. The only problem is it's sort of broken. Street Pass works fine in some areas like Tokyo, but down here in Australia I have no hope of ever stumbling across someone who has a 3DS, with Street Pass enabled, their wireless turned on, and a save file for a game I own. There are just too many variables. Even when I was in Tokyo and tested Street Pass, I forgot to turn on the wireless a couple of times and went for a walk. So while the feature is very cool, it's just too easy for it to fall apart. That said, when it does work, it is very satisfying. Seeing the notifications LED light up always gave me a little buzz, and it is a genuine shame that the feature will only be put to its full use in certain parts of the world. Spot Pass works on a similar principle as Street Pass. It allows your 3DS to automatically download data while it's sleeping, but in this case that data comes from the internet. This allows developers to send new content to your games without your intervention. This has the advantage of working flawlessly no matter where you are in the world as long as you have an internet connection, but it'll really be up to developers to make this feature continually exciting in the future. Nintendo included a charging cradle with the 3DS. This allows you to easily charge your 3DS without having to plug it in every time. And the reason they've done this is because Nintendo are well aware that the 3DS does not have good battery life. I haven't done any specific tests myself because I find it easy enough to just place the 3DS in the cradle throughout the day, so I haven't been caught in the situation where I want to play a game and don't have any battery. But according to most tests, you'll be getting about 3 to 5 hours of battery life on average with full brightness, 3D effects turned on and wireless off. And this sort of sucks. Nintendo will surely ramp up the battery life in the next version of the 3DS, and that does make this version feel sort of gimped. If you have consistent access to the charging cradle, I don't think this really matters, but it will be very noticeable if you're someone who plays the 3DS when going to and from school or work, and then maybe during your lunch break. The trick is to quickly form the habit of putting the 3DS in the cradle whenever you're not playing it. At the end of the day, the Nintendo 3DS is just a fun device to play around with. There's a ton of content packed into the operating system, and a solid lineup of games already in development. Some people hate the 3D, Street Pass is broken, a lot of the launch titles are depressingly bad, and even Nintendo's own creations are said to be light on content. I don't want to make the 3DS seem like some perfect piece of technology. It's not. But as you explore the home menu or play the augmented reality games or take 3D photos, it's hard not to smile because it's just a fun device to use and show off to your friends.